Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar fan commentary track. This one is going to be for Book 1 Water Episode 4, The Warriors of Kyoshi. Continue to suggest other episodes of both Avatar and Korra for me to do in future episode commentary videos, but if you want to sync up your copy of the episode with this commentary track, have it ready to go at the start of the episode, including the introduction. And at the end of this intro section of the video, I will stop talking. There'll be a pause for about 10 seconds with just pure silence. And then when I start talking again after that pause, I'll hit play, you hit play, and we should be synced up. So, bringing the introduction of the video to an end, after the 10-second pause and you hear me speak again, you hit play, I hit play, and we should be synced up. Okay, so here we are with 104, The Warriors of Kyoshi. One of our early episodes, of course, just 4 episodes into the series at this point. This is a very notable episode for, of course, being the debut episode of Suki, who becomes, of course, pretty much like a main character to a degree by the end of the series. She joins Team Avatar, and her first appearance here was so popular with fans that they basically decided to include her more as the series went on. And it's great to see the legacy of this episode, as just like the fans were so popular and so interested in this character. They brought her back, and now she is so beloved by the fandom that everyone's kind of like, why is she always left out of these group shots with the characters? Like, include Suki on the cover if you're going to include the other members of Team Avatar. Really feature her. And it's just like, please creators, like, remember that Suki is a member of the team as well. And that's a great thing with this episode, to just like, this is where it started for the character. It's also a very interesting episode to look back on, given the Kyoshi novels in mind, knowing that this was the debut of like pretty much everything Kyoshi related. So yeah, nice opening scene. Like, they haven't had any luck tracking Aang and where he's gone. Iroh expects Zuko to completely blow up at this news because they haven't found any information about Aang, and so he's like, I'm completely calm. I don't need any calming tea. Remember that from the earlier episodes. And of course, he blows up. And here we go. We learn, of course, that Aang is a master of evasive maneuvering, which he is. We've seen him as an airbender dodge. He's great at evasive maneuvering, but not in terms of tactically like this. It's purely, his movements are purely based on where the good animals to ride are. Which is a very important plot point in this episode, because they go to this island so Aang can ride the giant koi fish. But he ends up, of course, riding the unagi as well. And here we go. This is an interesting plot point of just like Aang trying to impress Katara, Katara not showing as much interest, him then encountering lots of girls who are impressed by him, letting that go to his head, and then Katara being revealed to actually be a little bit jealous. There's a little bit of an element of it being kind of a misunderstanding, because I think, Katara, to Aang, like, it looks like Katara runs off to do something and completely ignored him, but she actually is just, cautious about something, and it just leads to a bit of a misunderstanding. It's not a major issue, but it's the one part of this episode that maybe holds it back. If there was more significance to what went on with Aang and Katara here, I think this episode might be slightly higher rated. But we also get the tease of Sokka's sexism again. So that was presented in the earlier episodes and is coming back here. And this is also the episode where they pretty much like fully deal with it. Just straight up in this episode, it's the one episode that deals with it. And it works. And I really appreciate the way that they do it, because the episode doesn't make you hate Sokka for being that way, because there's an element of you understanding his situation. He's the only guy in his tribe in or around that age who sort of can actually be sort of an active warrior. But because he's still on the younger side of things, he hasn't had the training. Like, his father left before he could give, I suppose, Sokka the proper training that he needed. And because the tribe is so small, he took everyone who could train Sokka with him. It's why Battle of the Water Tribe later on in the season is actually an important episode for Sokka, to finally get some of that training for Sokka to be able to like prove himself within the tribe. And it speaks to this idea of like like he says in this episode, he's the best warrior in his tribe. It's true, but it's not the full truth of the situation, and he kind of lets it go to his head a little bit. As you sort of saw, there's a little bit of like the fantasy of like, I'm the commander of my forces back in the village, but his forces are just the kids. And so he's brave and clever, but he really has very little technical skill. And that's what he has to learn here, even if it is from girls, as he finds out here. The strength of this arc is, I think, they don't overly vilify or make you hate Sokka, so that you fully can get behind his sort of turn when he just completely bows in front of Suki and the other girls, and it would be an honor to be trained by them, and so on. Yeah, you see the kind of funny animation there for Aang's running. Very different and stylistic compared to what we see in basically like the entire rest of the series, just highlighting the different animation studios that there are and the variants that can come based on, I suppose, what animators basically are on the series. Because of course you have different people animating each scene and so on. It's bound to happen that there's little inconsistencies. That's just one of the very, very extreme ones. But yeah, here's the introduction of the Kyoshi warriors. They're captured really, really quickly. No fight whatsoever, showing their sort of stealth as well. And here's Oyaji and Suki. And yeah, Sokka's immediately like, oh, girls, where are the guys who captured us? Just these little lines that are just getting across that he just cannot believe that this happened because of girls. And notice that Aang isn't saying any of this stuff. This is Sokka's issue to deal with here. And Sokka's just like, Katara's just like, yeah, I know he's a complete idiot, but please don't kill him over this. But yeah. And here we go. Here's the proof. If they're all about, Kyoshi Island, then Aang is the Avatar. He should be fine here, yes? And so because of his experience in the last episode of the Southern Air Temple, I suppose he's more familiar with his past lives now, and he actually knows the idea of Kyoshi. And she's been gone for centuries, 400 years ago. That's a very, very interesting point, because they basically forced themselves to have a character who's over 200 years old. Now, it takes a little bit in the series for you to get to that point, because just them saying that here, you don't know for sure, because like they haven't confirmed to us like what age Roku was when he died and stuff like that. But they definitely overly account for a lot of stuff in what they say there. In regards to like Aang's 112, that's fair enough. We later learn that Roku lives to be 70. Foamy Mouth Guy's great. Had to comment on that. And then I do like this sequence of just transitioning the fish being caught all the way to Zuko's plate. It's a great way to get the information across. But anyway, Aang's 112. Roku, as we find out later, lives to be 70 years old. So that's 182 years overall, going back to, I suppose, Kyoshi's death. They say she was born 400 years ago. So if you just do 400 minus 182, that's at least 218 years old that she has to be. But they actually commit later on in the series to the idea that, okay, she actually lived 12 years longer than that. So it was like actually, over 400 years ago just by a little bit to get to the 230 kind of even. But it's just that sort of proof that when they go for timeline stuff, they tend to not overly account for a lot of what's going on. So you get little weird things of certain characters being much older than they should be. Now with Kyoshi, they ultimately committed to it fully, completely. And it fits perfectly the character of Kyoshi as we know her, even from just the series. That of course someone that's like that physically imposing, has that personality, of course she'd live to be 230 years old. She would not allow herself to die at such a young age. Of course she had to live double the lifespan of everyone else. It fits her character. But it's definitely an extreme within the series. But yeah, Sokka is honestly upset about what's happened. It's something he has to deal with here. Love Momo's hand reaching there for the food. And basically Momo puts himself into a bit of a food coma in this episode. And yeah, don't let the fame go to your head, Aang, in this place that basically worships the Avatar. And that's it. That's this arc, basically, of these two in this episode. It's just a little bit of jealousy. Aang lets it go to his head, and there's a slight element of like, but you're the one I wanted to impress. And Katara is impressed by Aang. He's impressed by her. And it's just this little misunderstanding in a way. But I think the fangirls are cool because you have Coco as the main one, who, of course, Coco is named after Kyoshi's daughter, Coco, who we know basically very little about. But it's a cool thing that shows the sort of lineage of that's how famous Kyoshi is on Kyoshi Island, that even, like, her own children, you know, girls to this day are still being named after, like, you know, I suppose Kyoshi and the people related to her. Yeah. Lot of cool scenes here, just like, you know, the painter just like, that's way too much, I'm going away. And then, of course, you know, amazing, you know, airbending push-ups with Momo on his back, of course. Super impressive, and Katara knows he's let it gone to his head already. But she is slightly jealous. And then here are the big scenes. I think everyone remembers the episode for these scenes. Kyoshi warriors are training, he comes in, and he's kind of like, okay, I'll go and train with them. They just took me by surprise. Like, when we actually train properly, I'll show that I'm still good. And he's trying to prove to himself that he has skill here. And he realizes completely against actual warriors who have been trained, he isn't very good. And that's the thing. He gets utterly humbled here in this scene. And has to accept that, like, for him to train the way things are, to be useful to the team going forward, he is going to have to accept help wherever he can get it from, even if it is these girls. And it's all about the strength of, given the way he's acting here, how do they do him finally, like, apologizing to him? And they do it very, very well. I like the technique, because that's the big difference between the two of them here. Of, like, Suki and the Kyoshi Warriors have incredible technique, which is what Sokka does not have. It's why, like, Sokka's master much later in the series is so important for him to finally get, like, a kind of weapon art to himself of being a swordsman by the end of the series. But yeah, utterly humiliated by Suki, just Suki. And I love the girl there just holding Momo completely in the food coma after eating all the stuff he took. And yeah, you get these conversations here. I think the only thing that holds this episode back, like I said, is just that I don't think you get anything particularly big from the Katara-Aang dynamic in this episode. Because obviously it's so early, they're not really leaning into romance really just yet. Other than that, like, of course we know Aang from basically the second he saw her, you know, really likes her. And that's why he's trying to impress her. But they don't, like, develop it into anything in this episode. It's just a quick minor issue that the two have. They get over it pretty nicely because they are close. And that's it. There's no major takeaway from this really, other than that Aang doesn't tend to let it go to his head. Pole guy in the background just arguing with the pole there, the piece of wood. I think the fandom just tends to just call him pole guy. Because if you look back over the course of the scene, he's now lying on the ground, like almost like crying to himself in the background. It's just a weird little kind of continuity thing in the background. Like, this is the episode with some of those weird background character things. Foamy Mouth Guy's in this episode. You know, Cabbage Merchant in the next episode. Pole Guy in this episode as well. And here we go. Here's the big one. And they do this so well. He just bows before them and asks to be trained. I would be honored if you would train me. And he apologizes for what he said. And you know, she notes that it's sort of an exception here. We don't train outsiders, and we usually especially don't train guys. But we are going to train you. But we're going to have a little bit more fun with you. If you want to train the way we train, you have to wear what we wear. And because we're all women, you're going to have to wear the Kyoshi warrior outfit. Which obviously, we know the significance behind a lot of it. She just explained, like, how they view a lot of Kyoshi's sort of artifacts in their own way. But, like, obviously to Kyoshi, it's like, like the fans and the headdress are, like, related to her mother. Like, the clothing was given to her by, like, Janju and stuff like that. It's kind of funny. And this is kind of an interesting one in that, like, they're just arguing back and forth here, but I really like the little moment of just Katara's just doing little bits of training by just messing around with the water like that to increase her control over it. And notice that that little motion that she sort of is doing there with the water sort of comes back in how Katara takes the water out of Aang's kind of lungs, or whatever way you want to interpret it, later on. I think it is the same motion, and it's really clever if that was actually like planned out that way. But yeah, a little bit more finesse now from Sokka, but he still throws it pretty hard. But again, that comes back. You'll notice in the fight later that one of the Kyoshi warriors ends up taking out one of the Fire Nation guards by like literally chucking the closed fan at one of them. But yeah, and this is what they do really well here. Of the whole episode isn't just let's make fun of Sokka, let's have it be all at the expense of Sokka. Let's actually make the dynamic between these two interesting. That Suki, the reason she's training him one-on-one here is because she's showing an interest in him. And there is this nice, relationship developing between the two. They're kind of warriors, but from kind of different perspectives, and she can respect that, like, he took being made fun of like that and actually just wanted to be trained by them, and she can, see something in that and actually has an attraction towards him. And it's one of the strengths of like the character of like there's a certain simple character arc in a way to Suki of just the line that she says later on in the episode that just works so well for the character, that she can be one of the strongest like non-bender fighters in the series, but also just be in a relationship with one of the characters and there not be this conflict of interest. She's not just the sort of love interest, but no, she truly is one of the most notable non-bender fighters. And everyone is a huge fan of Suki. We want more from Suki. But of course, Katara and Aang make up very, very simply there, just showing that it was all a little kind of, petty, small stuff. Just a little minor argument, nothing serious. But now Aang is actually in danger. Here's the Unagi. Interesting with its sort of water gun attack, of course. And it's a super dangerous thing. Like here, the Unagi is this very powerful creature. Like you almost could see a way where like they could have revealed like an animal like this was the kind of bending animal for water, just because it can spray out water like that. But yeah, like it's one of those animals that like that's a nice matchup against like sky bison, badger mole, dragons, and so on. It's that type of animal. But yeah, Katara's bravery here, going out to save Aang. She does some nice waterbending stuff in this episode. And again, we're so early here, like she's completely self-thought. It's just sort of like, in a way, the power of emotion and just gradually getting it there. Of just, sticking your hand out, forcing them back. And then the more subtle bending here. More water guns. And yeah, the arrival of Zuko. And it's a good episode because there's a nice blend of like they slowed it down at points, little bits of action with like Sokka's training, the sequences with the fish and in the water, and now Zuko's here. And there's actually going to be a full-on battle between Zuko's crew and the Kyoshi warriors. Like the episode does have a little bit of everything. But Aang has, like, his presence there has brought the Fire Nation to Kyoshi Island, which has stayed out of the war up to now. And again, notice the kind of motion, it's that kind of, pulling it up like she was doing before. But it shows a skill with waterbending, the fact that she can do it delicately enough to not, like, hurt Aang when doing it. But yeah, really, really interesting for sure. And yeah, Momo's just on the roof again. I love the subtle animation, like he's always included there. So Sokka's gotten pretty good after just like a day of training, pretty much. And the girls, are forced straight into action, including Sokka. I love the silence here. Just they walk into the village, they're like, oh, they're just helpless villagers. Little do they know. Stealth attack. I love they're just on the roofs. It's really good. Like non-benders versus some of them are firebenders and so on. Just cool takeout of like half of the group already. just full-on technique. And then we're going to see Suki versus Zuko. And again, it sort of shows the difference. Like your average bender is typically better than a non-bender. And I suppose the idea I get from this is that in terms of character development for Suki, the fact that she gets hit a few times and gets sort of like, Zuko gets the best of her here in a way. You can tell she herself does a lot of training so that she is very good against benders going forward. And it's sort of the drive from this episode, meeting the group, meeting Sokka, but also encountering someone like Zuko that forces her to kind of grow as well. Because she's definitely much better as we see her in like her later appearances. So that's a nice show of growth. Along with Sokka kind of stepping in to help Suki as well. And then Aang with fans is like extremely OP. But the few times he uses them in the series, he tends to be like, oh, that was a bit boring, and he just drops them and goes on. But yeah, like fans of course are the perfect weapon for an airbender, and of course with Kyoshi, we know that the reason she uses them is because one, the fans are from her mother, and her mother used them to enhance her airbending when she developed that spiritual taint by becoming Dao Fei. But Kyoshi uses them because it helps to focus her earthbending, because she tends to have that problem of not being able to do subtle bending and only really being able to do big bending. But I suppose she gets past that in her later years. And they have to leave, but Aang feels so terrible about what he's brought to the village. But yeah, you saw Coco looking after Momo. It was pretty good. And here we go, here's a nice scene again. The big line from Suki. And I like that kind of counterpoint of like, I should have just respected you as a warrior. But like, she makes the point of just, why can't it be both? And she kisses him, just showing you that like, oh, that's why she did focus on him to a degree. Like there was a slight attraction there, despite, you almost being led to, dislike Sokka for what he's saying and stuff like that. And I think today, I think a lot of writers, I wouldn't have the confidence that they'd be able to do a topic like this, of dealing with a character who has a little bit of sexism. It's not something serious, but just deal with it in a nice way. And I think this episode is just I haven't seen it done as well as this, basically. It's really well done. And yeah, Aang gets his sort of big Avatar moment. He is good with animals, and here he is, taming this animal that kind of bested him before, using it to put out the fires. It was set up earlier on that it could spray water, and this completely douses the flames of the firebenders. And because Aang gets away, they have no reason to stay there anymore. And I love that Aang goes up and is caught by Appa in Appa's paws. He doesn't land on the back of the saddle like most of the time. Appa just catches him in front, and Aang has to climb up. And a cool heroic moment of Katara was actually impressed by that. The episode comes around sort of full circle in that way. So, I think it's one of those episodes where it's not the most important episode, but it hits a lot of the beats that you want, and it just happens to maybe just not... I think on Avatar, there are just a lot of episodes that are very, very good, that I think an episode like this, that I think everyone pretty much universally likes and likes a lot, there's going to be episodes that when you order them in a row, end up feeling lower down than they should be. But then you look higher up on the list and you're like, oh, I can't put this episode ahead of that one. What about that one? No, not quite. And you just end up feeling bad that oh, why is this one at 39 on my list? I almost feel like it should be 20. But then you realize that, oh, the problem here is that I rate 35 episodes of Avatar very, very close together, where there's only a point score difference between them, and it's so close. But yeah, very enjoyable episode. Solid development for Sokka, where he learns some skills to improve his technique. We've introduced a very interesting minor character who is going to come back in a big way. We learned about one of the other past avatars. We didn't learn too much about her. We pretty much, the only thing we learned about Kyoshi is that how old she is, which ends up being this crazy point about the character that there was so much sort of like controversy about it because it was basically a mistake, and then later we learn all the crazy stuff about her and just the insane personality that she is, in terms of just like so over the top, in terms of like she is the most powerful, imposing avatar. But yeah, you know, it's the 4th episode of the show. You don't expect it to be like at its best, but it's nearly there. Like, this is such a strong episode, just a few episodes in, of like we've just been in the Southern Water Tribe, we moved up a little bit, we went to the Southern Air Temple, and now we've gone to one of the most, I suppose, south kind of Earth Kingdom islands. So we're moving along kind of geographically as well, and we're about to enter, I suppose, the Earth Kingdom. Just highlighting that, okay, Southern Earth Kingdom, we're going to work our way through and eventually get up to the north. It's pretty good. You know, the series is really kind of ticking along at this point, highlighting that we can do a lot of different things. We're still early enough to where like every place that we visit is completely new and interesting to us, of like a kind of more isolated island down the south that's been left out of the war, but it's an island a previous avatar sort of founded. That's super interesting. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.